Over time, accurate knowledge put to practice creates the experience that's necessary to become a wise person. And the Book of Proverbs is entitled in the text, now not by the modern Christian publishers, but in the Hebrew text as the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, the king of Israel. Well, a read of the book discloses that really it's an anthology of wisdom literature. Some discourse, some short, pithy sayings. As you read Proverbs through, you get the distinct sense that something happens when you finish up chapter 9. Up until then, you've been reading a series of discourses that engage you on various facets of wisdom. But when you start chapter 10, it's clear that the style or the subgenre shifts. John Collins describes reading straight through chapters 10 and following as being like trying to have a conversation with someone who always replies with one-liners. So, at chapter 10, indeed, the form shifts to a collection of aphorisms, these short, pithy, mostly two-line statements on life and morals and ethics and relationships and so on. We see the header in chapter 10, verse 1, the Proverbs of Solomon. And that takes us through chapter 22, verse 16. Then beginning with chapter 22, 17 through 24 are preserved the sayings of the sage. And then 25 through 29, we've got more Solomonic proverbs, which were copied by Hezekiah's men. Then in chapter 30, the words of Agur. Chapter 31, first 9 verses, the words of Lemuel. And then the collection wraps up with this beautiful acrostic poem, The Virtuous Woman, verses 10 through 31. I think it's important to keep in mind that the Proverbs are not guarantees. They're truths that have borne the test of time. The sage observed real life in real time, but biblical proverbs are not merely natural theology drawn only from general revelation. The biblical sage is steeped in God's promise covenant with Israel, and it's from that perspective that he looks for ways to illustrate covenant values applied to daily life. The Proverbs aren't just randomly collected. There is a rhetorical order marked by devices like inclusios. We've got sort of a, bookends. Look at Proverbs 10, verse 6 through 11, and you'll see the bookends there. Or with catchwords like king, Proverbs chapter 16, verses 10 through 15. You see these catchwords. Or fool in chapter 26. Or Yahweh in chapters 15 and 16. Or sometimes the chiasm that we talked about earlier. Or parallels, like we see in chapter 29, verses 15, 16, 17, 18. Sometimes thematic clusters, chapter 18, verses 4 through 8. Well, key verse, 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. I think Proverbs 15:33. The fear of the Lord is instruction in wisdom, and humility comes before honor. The thesis statement of the anthology is chapter 1, verses 2 through 7. In essence, it's to develop moral standards, practical discernment, producing a virtuous life and a virtuous society. In essence, as I mentioned, it's the practical application of Torah to everyday life. So, read those individual aphorisms from the perspective of the thesis statement and the overall structure of the collection. Don't gloss over the vocabulary of the prologue. Wisdom, that is skill. Instruction, that is training. Understanding, that is discernment. Righteousness, that is right behavior. Justice, right decision. Equity, morality. Prudence, sensible. Discretion, thoughtfulness. And pay attention to rhetorical and literary devices like these for indications of context, and interpret the Proverbs in light of the larger biblical context. Again, a proverb is not an unconditional promise. So, for example, while Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, he won't depart from it," while that does express an important programmatic principle of discipling that's grounded back in Torah, remember Deuteronomy 6, it's not an ironclad guarantee. Exceptions of the principle of 22:6 is anticipated in the very same collection by the observation that folly is bound up in the heart of a child. Verse 15. So, those who entertain the notion of guarantee need only to reread the book of Job against any number of the rosy proverbs that get upended in Job's day-to-day experience. So, it's true, for example, that very often a soft answer turns away wrath. But there's no guarantee when one's dealing with a very stubborn, arrogant person. I really appreciate the observation made by Stewart and Fee in their How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth, that Proverbs aren't legal guarantees from God, but they're poetic guidelines for good behavior. Some Proverbs seem counterintuitive. For example, the fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. Proverbs 10:27. Or, the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. 22:4. You and I both agree that really is counter to too many instances that we have observed in real life. On the other hand, you notice a number of proverbs that are based on analogies to life in the animal kingdom. So you've got comparisons with ants and oxen and locusts and eagles and lions and dogs and, well, this reflects the conviction that the one and only God of creation is sovereign over all. And the order He established in the universe lies behind the cause and effect patterns that are observed by the sage. Think about it. We'll see in a bit.